Hey, welcome again to the Grace in the Chaos podcast. It's a broadcast where we talk about some of the challenges of being parents of special needs children, and what a blessing that is to be able to come together and talk about it. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Dr. Ryan Rush. I have the privilege of serving as the pastor of Kingsland, and everybody around this table today is actually a part of Kingsland. That's not always the case on the broadcast, but what a blessing to talk to people who we're hanging out with. By the way, this is Dr. Chris Sneller, my co-host and friend.
Howdy, everyone.
Glad to be with you.
Thanks. Good to be with you, Ryan. So Grace in the Chaos allows us to have great conversations with families in our community that have kids with special needs. So we're very excited today to hear from Steve and Deborah Decker. Thanks for joining us.
Sure.
We really do appreciate it. Really, we want to start with hearing a little bit about your story. So could you tell us about yourselves, what's your background, and how did the two of you meet?
Okay. I grew up in Oklahoma. Okay. We actually met in Oklahoma. Steve had moved to Oklahoma for a job, and we ended up meeting online before it was cool.
All right.
So we met in 2000, online. We met in 2000. And then started dating, and
the rest is history.
The rest is history. I got married in 2001.
Love it.
Yeah, I actually grew up and lived until I was 30 in Richmond, Virginia.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, and had a divorce, was kind of reevaluating my life. Saw this video of these crazy storm chasers, and I had always been interested in severe weather, and had actually
okay, that's fascinating.
I'd actually tried storm chasing in Virginia, but usually it's just sloshy squall lines.
That's kind of boring.
Nothing really exciting.
Wow.
I used to do what was called, I would call squall line surfing. I'd get along the gust front and drive my car along the gust front. A couple times I looked behind me and trees were falling down, so I thought that maybe wasn't a good idea. No, this was in Virginia.
Oh, in Virginia.
So when a job opportunity came in Oklahoma for me, I said, "Yep," because I'd already been coming out on vacations for storm chasing.
So have you actually been in the midst of like a tornado? Like
we lived in Norman, Oklahoma, basically in the epicenter.
So it was you were whether you wanted to or not. At that point.
So for date night, you like, hey, honey, let's go chase another tornado?
No, she shut this.
Well,
I got with her, and she kind of shut it all down.
After we had the kids, and we spent so many nights down in our storm shelter in the ground.
Well, I thought if you're a storm chaser, why would you be in the storm shelter? Aren't you supposed to be like out there with your car bolted into the ground or something?
It's a paradox. I mean, you got a family and a house you got to worry about, but at the same time you want to be out on the lawn with the lawn chair.
Right.
You know?
Right. There you go.
Not the lawn chair. That's the last kind of chair you can want.
Okay.
Storm, Steve.
Well, and Deborah is being humble as well. Special agent with the FBI.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you have a storm chaser and a special
and
agent
an FBI agent.
They're way more interesting than us, Chris.
Maybe they should just take over the podcast.
No, right, exactly.
So, how does this fit into the story? You are a special agent?
I retired from the FBI.
How long did you spend with the FBI?
25 years.
And what did you do for the FBI?
I was an agent. I did whatever they told me to do. Did investigations.
Crimes against kids.
Yeah, for a long time I worked crimes against children, and that's when I was actually stationed in Lawton, Oklahoma, is where I was working that, and when Steve and I met. And I don't know if you know this, but anywhere there's Indian land, it's federal jurisdiction. Okay. So in Oklahoma, we had trust land. We don't have reservations, but we had trust land. And so any crime, any felony that happens on trust land is FBI jurisdiction.
Okay. So interesting. Yeah. Okay.
So I was working murders and rapes and child abuse and everything. I mean, it was more like being a police detective, really.
Had to be. Right. Yeah. And what an impact that you made. So thank you for that.
Sure.
Well, let's dive into this stuff.
Storm chasing FBI. What's next, Ryan?
That could be more adventurous than what we had. I know. Well, I'll tell you what. When we talk about the topic of this podcast, we know that all of us are families with uniquenesses, right? Tell us how your special needs journey began.
Yeah.
Oh goodness. Well, I got pregnant pretty soon after we got married, and we had our first son, Matthew, And he was diagnosed with autism at age 2 in 2004. He had all the classic red flags, the toe walking, the hand flapping, the delayed speech, delayed milestones, lining up his toys. Every red flag Matthew had. So
I'm just curious, did you kind of both notice that at the same time, or was it one or the other?
I think I started noticing it before she did, just the milestones. You know, everyone got that book, what to expect when you're expecting, and then the follow-up on that. And I just kept on looking in the book and, no, not hitting that, not hitting that, not hitting that. And, at some point we went to our pediatrician in Lawton, and she just kept on assuring us, nah, he'll grow out of it, he'll be fine, nothing to worry about. But it just kept on, itching our brain that he just was not doing what he was supposed to be doing.
Okay.
And finally, we went to Norman to meet a specialist for autism, and she gave us the diagnosis.
Okay.
So our life has been totally different ever since.
Yeah.
And by that time, our second son, Nathan, had come along, and they're 16 months apart, by the way. So
very close.
He was diagnosed at age 2 in 2005, but with him it was different. He met his milestones, most of them. We thought he was fine. We were like, oh, good, he's going to be able to take care of Matthew when he's older, and it was like a switch flipped. And
for Nathan.
Yes, for Nathan.
So he went from being
he had great eye contact, nothing really that was – he was a little slow on his milestones, but we thought, well, Matthew was too. So.
Actually, the specialist that we saw for Matthew looked at Nathan and said, "You got absolutely nothing to worry about."
Really, the same specialist.
She said, "Oh, it'd be like lightning striking twice if that kid has it too."
So, tell us the progression then. So that when he was 2 years old, you got
when he was 2,
something switched.
We looked over one day. And both boys were doing the same thing right next to each other. They were flapping their hands, running up to the TV on their toes, just excited. That's what they do when they're excited. And they were both doing it. And he and I just looked at each other, and it was like, no way. And as it turns out, Nathan is actually much more severely affected than Matthew is.
How about that? Okay. So how old are the boys now?
Okay, so Matthew is 22.
Okay.
And Nathan will be 20 in 21. I'm sorry, he'll be 21 in June.
Yeah. Okay.
So you get that diagnosis. It's been 20 years since then. Yeah. How did that diagnosis change and affect your life? Because you had a career. You get these diagnoses. What changed in your life? And then from Oklahoma to the greater Houston area, tell us about that change, how you got here.
Well, for me, with my career, I had the opportunity to kind of put it on pause for a little bit. Yeah. And so we made that decision for me to do that. Now, that pause has lasted 22 years now.
Okay. Well.
So that's what we decided. One of us had to be with the kids.
Wow.
And so that was me.
So let's be very clear. You made a conscious decision as a family that the best thing for your family would be for you to be a stay-at-home dad,
right?
Yes.
To care for Matthew and Nathan. So I think for anyone listening to this podcast or watching it, I think that's a really important note that every family has to talk and wrestle through what is best for our family with our reality.
Right.
And there's no formula. I mean, I think that's one important lesson. There is no formula.
Yeah. With my background, I could not leave my kids with anybody that I didn't know. Wow. So Steve was and it was with the thought that he would go back to work eventually.
After a couple years.
That didn't happen.
I'll fix this autism thing, and I'll move on to being my industrial engineer that I was.
Fascinating. Well, let's be real for just a second. I'm going to go ahead and say it because the reality is in a lot of families with special needs, it's the dad who doesn't really – I don't want to pick on the dads. We're not beating them up. I'm grateful that you're listening, Dad. But they tend to be the ones that emotionally kind of check out.
Right.
Because I
hard.
think sometimes because we don't know how to fix it.
We don't know what
it's
to do.
really frustrating.
Right.
And so the fact that you laid that life aside to say, I need to do this right now. is really an important lesson, I think, an example for a lot of dads. They don't have to necessarily quit your job, but you're all in, right?
Absolutely.
And the only way we survive this is mom and dad are all in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I shouldn't say the only way to survive that. I know there's a lot of great single parents who are making it. But the ideal, if I'm talking to that younger family, is, guys, stay the course.
So, Steve, could you speak directly to the dads that are listening to this that are wrestling with their career and loving their family well and caring for a child with special needs? Emotionally, how did you navigate that season of transitioning to a couple-year pause that becomes 5 years, that becomes a decade, that's now 2 decades? What would be the advice and encouragement you have to those dads?
For the one thing, we are just totally blessed that we had that opportunity to live on one income.
That's true.
Mm-hmm. That's very
Great
rare
point.
these days.
Yeah.
So God blessed us with that. Most folks don't have that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
For me personally, you have to basically put yourself in the back seat. You have to realize that they are the number one priority. As soon as you start worrying about yourself and what you want to be doing, you're losing it. Every time I've gotten angry or frustrated, I look at myself and I realize that it's because it's something that I want to be doing for myself and not something that I'm doing for my children.
Wow.
Yeah.
And once you flip that upside down, it all works a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
Flip what? Just be very explicit to our audience with what you have to flip.
What you pursue.
You have to flip everything.
Hopes, dreams, plans.
Dreams,
Yeah.
everything. Everything is your kid. Everything is to make sure they're safe,
Interesting.
that they're happy,
Right.
that their needs are taken care of, and you put yourself on the back burner in a lot of cases.
And to be honest, every time, there's been times when we started thinking, hey, well, maybe we can start doing some of this now.
Yeah.
But then they started having seizures.
Yeah.
So now they both are diagnosed with
Does
epilepsy.
this mean maybe we could travel? Maybe we could do
yes,
this?
maybe we could travel.
Maybe we could.
Yes.
And then something comes up, and
Yes.
it's that constant
Exactly.
disappointment or change of expectations.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
now that's what we were kind of hoping to do is
Wow.
do some traveling. I do a lot of camping. He would love to go camping with me, but we don't have anybody that can handle their seizures, all the medicines they take, just everything. And so
Wow.
we
Guys,
have to kind of tag team everything.
Yeah.
I think this is so important. I want to go off script for a second.
No, I think we
we've talked
should.
about these questions that we've been asking people, and one of the questions we ask is, what lessons have you learned? But you just shared a really important lesson I think special needs families have to get to, and that is to give your plans to God.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Because if you live according to an expectation or a construct of, well, I'm going to
This
do
is
this.
the way my
and
life will be.
It'll make you
Yeah.
crazy.
It absolutely will.
Yeah.
You will just get so frustrated. You will get angry. You'll question everything. But once you surrender all that and you realize what your real purpose is,
Yeah.
then you find your rhythm with it.
I'm thinking of the passage where Paul writes that you've been bought with a price and your life is not your own. Therefore, glorify God in your bodies. And I think maybe that's a gift as special needs parents we have. We learn that lesson in a very deep and acute way that our life is not our own.
Yeah, that's a good word.
We
that's,
make
that's the case
sacrifices.
for everybody,
That's
but
the
it
case
has
for everyone.
to be.
But it's
it
very
has to be for
acutely
ours.
felt for us.
Right. I'll tell you, when right after Lily was born, we had been working on kind of a dream of building our own house. And I mean, dream house is a strong word, but for a pastor, we had like 2 acres we'd bought, and we had an architect custom designed this house and put it all in. We had the blueprints ready, and then everything happened. All this stuff happened. And I can remember specifically us, in the car. I remember when Lana looked at me and said, "There is no chance of us building that house." I'm like, "Really? I can't." She's like, "I have no bandwidth to build a house."
We have 2 beautiful house plans. One of them was in Elgin, Oklahoma.
Right.
Then we found out there was autism, so
Right.
we moved to Norman where the services were better. All that got put in the back. Then we had this beautiful house that we were going to set up or build in Sulphur,
Our
Oklahoma.
retirement house.
Right.
A retirement forever house. We had a special needs retreat that we were going to build around the surrounding property. Then the epilepsy hit. So it's like...
And we couldn't be in a rural area like that.
Right.
Isn't that interesting?
So
Same
we had,
thing. I wonder how many
we had
people have
two big
this
rolls
story.
of beautiful plans.
Yeah.
We paid $1,000 each
I know,
for it.
I bet you would sell them for any listener that wants
Right, we
discounted
have for sale.
architectural plans.
Gotta go.
The Deckers are happy to offer it to
We
you.
have one. We keep, and about every 5-6 years, I'll pull them out and we'll look at them and remember. But it became very symbolic for
Yeah.
us. We're handing these blueprints to God.
Yeah.
Like, we don't get to plan it out.
Right.
Lord, you have something better for us.
But all of that, I think, was part of the process getting us to where we are. Because if you had ever told me that I was going to move from Oklahoma and I was going to live near Houston, Texas, I would have told you were insane.
Right.
But that got us, we moved to North Texas first because we were involved with a place up there that we thought the boys would eventually live in and everything. That didn't work out. Then I find out about Brookwood. Then we moved down to then we moved down to Sealy. The whole thing was kind of like God moved us in small chunks
Yep.
to get us to where we're supposed to be. And
That's
I
so
firmly
interesting.
believe this
Kind,
is where
kind of
we're
a little
supposed to
side
be.
note that's kind of interesting is my mom and dad. I told you I grew up in Virginia.
Yeah.
My mom and dad met at the YMCA downtown in Houston.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Small world.
Yeah.
The whole idea of having architectural designs for a house or a special needs retreat, I'm thinking about the architectural design that I had for my life.
Yeah.
As a 30-year-old, this is what I'm going to do with my life and career, and how God's like, no. Like, it's not your plan for your life.
Right.
It's my plan for your life. And I've had to wrestle with the life that God has blessed us with is the good life that He has
Right.
planned for us. Because I want to get upset at times that life hasn't gone a certain way, and I realize
really
it's
good.
because I'm thinking, wait a second, you're not Lord of the universe.
Right.
But we want to act like that sometimes.
Well, let me tell you about, because this has been going on since we had the boys.
Yeah.
So after Nathan was born, he was born June of 2003. In December of 2003, I went through a really hard time where I had some postpartum depression, and then I worked a really traumatic case with the Bureau and was just having a really hard time. And because of that case, I ended up wanting to learn more, like to kind of get back to my roots and learn about Christianity and Jesus and all that.
Okay.
And so Steve and I, we were living in Lawton at the time, and there was this ad in the paper for this Methodist church was putting on the Alpha course.
Okay.
And I thought, oh, that sounds neat.
Yeah.
It's
a great
hadn't
course.
been hadn't been to church in decades, probably.
I'm going to pause real quick
Yeah.
for listeners. The Alpha Course was a course designed by a church in London that explains the basics of the Christian faith, and it's a wonderful way to be introduced to the essence of Christianity. So keep
Absolutely.
going.
We
Great
called
stuff.
we called it Christianity for Dummies is kind of what it
No,
seemed like.
it's wonderful. It's a great
So
course.
anyway, we go to this church. It's a pretty small church in Lawton. Really enjoyed it. The pastor and his wife had an adult son with autism.
How about
Wow, okay.
And they started mentoring us. We eventually ended up starting a support group at that church for kids with special needs, and that kind of stuff has been happening ever since.
So to be
love
clear, because of Matthew and Nathan's realities, it led you to this church, and so it reinvigorated your relationship with God
Yeah.
because of this whole experience. Is that fair to say?
I would say, yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
Amazing.
That-
We would not be
Yeah.
coming to King's Land without autism.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Our neighbors introduced us on the idea that, hey, they've got this great special needs ministry that you need to be a part of. And he had a really good key lime pie that he brought with him. So
There you go.
Dennis Wilbanks.
whatever it
That's a
takes.
shout out to Dennis
How
and
about
Nancy.
that? Dennis and Nancy. some of
Ryan,
my
I'm
favorite
gonna
people.
take a pause because we haven't done this yet in the context of these conversations. Deb, could you maybe go a little bit deeper into this whole, like your postpartum depression and child with special needs, mental health, and
Yeah.
kids with special needs?
Yeah.
What did you learn in that season of how to navigate wrestling with your mental health and well-being in the midst of coming to realize that your child has
Yeah.
special needs and raising that child well? What are some lessons that
good
you can
question.
share with our audience about that season in your life?
Well, I just kind of figured out that I really needed to give it to God, and that's kind of been a lesson He's been working on with me. I've always been so independent, and I have a hard time asking for help. And even when Steve and I first got married, I had a hard time. I would just be doing something, and he'd be like, "I'll do that for you if you just let me know," But I'd been on my own for so long that I wasn't used to asking him,
Wow.
But that's really what God is working with me on now.
Now she won't stop telling me.
I love it.
He's teaching me to give up control and trust Him.
And ask for help.
And ask for help.
That's a huge lesson.
Bring anything to Him, and that's really what I've been working on now. I start off every day with doing my devotionals and prayer, and I work from home now, so all through the day I've got good Christian music on, and just to keep me aware of Him all through the day, and then prayers at night before I go to bed, and it's just my life is really different than it used to be. So.
I think this whole theme of asking for help, it doesn't just stop after your child gets to a certain age, because I've experienced in our oldest son Daniel with special needs, when he was little, we were desperate in asking for help to try to figure out his diagnosis and the best specialist. And then as he started to grow into the preschool years, the best therapies, the best schools to be in. And then high school, how do you advocate with the school district? And now that he's 23 years old, we still need help with figuring out what does his future hold and how could he have the most meaningful job possible. So I think we have to have a posture of continuing to ask for help.
Yeah, that's a good word. I mean, we all have to do that anyway, but once again, when we have a child with special needs, it kind of accelerates that process of recognizing that we need help. We can't do this on our own.
I mean, parents of typical kids, once they get to 18 or so, if they're going to college, you're still going to support them and that kind of thing. But at some point, you can kick them out of the nest. It's expected. That is never going to happen with us, ever. Right.
I think that deep reality that these wonderful children will need care and love the rest of their life. I think that that feeling for parents with special needs kids is probably one of the most challenging feelings.
Yeah.
That reality.
It's the number one.
It's daunting. It's what's going to happen when we're gone.
Good word.
That's the most daunting thoughts that I have is, are we going to get them into Brookwood? Are they going to be okay there? Is that going to work out? So.
Yeah. I think we all have those thoughts. What's being said without being said that I think is really important for our listeners who may not have a church like Kingsland around. You need to find a group of people that you can talk to. I mean, that's part of it, just to articulate this, to say it out loud, to have that support system. And you all found it in a church that really didn't have a ministry for that at the time, but you became that for some others. Right. And so even if you're going to a church that doesn't quite have what you call a special needs ministry, again, call Kingsland. We'd love to tell you, give whatever resources we can to help you get started. But don't hesitate to find those other people and be a friend so that you're not living alone. I think alone is really dangerous when it comes to special needs families.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's wonderful to know that there's other people who understand. So with that said, let's rewind for a second. I'm going to steal your question, Chris.
Yes, please do.
He usually does, but I like this so much.
Yes, it's a good question.
If you could rewind 20 years, what would you tell your younger selves? What advice would you give?
Buckle up.
Yeah.
Is that related to storm chasing or is that related to... Sorry.
No, autism, epilepsy, all that.
Yeah.
It's just life's what happens when you're busy making other plans. It's just...
When you say buckle up, I mean not just, hey, man, it's going to get hard, but what would you say? How are you really getting ready? Figuratively, you're buckling up. How can you get ready?
I wish that when I was younger, I had the faith that I have now, because I didn't. I didn't at that time. It would have been so much easier, and I think I would have made so many different decisions if I had the faith that I have now, because I basically grew up, didn't really have a father that was real active in my life, and then eventually when autism came along, we kind of lost the other part of my family too. They just couldn't handle it, And so I think I just wish I'd known this love when I was younger, because I just feel like it would have been so much easier.
Known this love.
Yeah.
I think we know what you mean, but what do you mean by this love? What kind of love you're referring to?
To know how involved God actually is in our lives.
Wow. Beautiful. I love that.
And that he's there. He knows what's going on. He's not. We're not going through any of this alone.
That's great.
He loves our boy. I mean, it's hard for me to believe this, but he loves our boys even more than we do.
That's a profound truth, isn't it?
Wow.
Yeah. And when you don't have parents or grandparents that have filled that role, that makes it even more special, I think.
Yes.
Well, it's also amazing to me. Yes, God does love your boys deeply, more deeply than you love them, but he also loves you with the same deep love.
Right.
And in that deep love and in his absolute control of things, he's chosen to bless you with 2 sons that have epilepsy, that have autism.
Yeah.
And that's what he's chosen to bless you with.
Mm.
And why? There's a mystery of the
mysteries
why.
we won't understand till heaven, right?
Huge mystery.
To me, I've always felt like these boys were chosen for us, because with my background, I've been so protective of them, just making sure that nothing bad ever happens to them. And
Right.
I mean, I could tell you some stories that, when the schools probably wanted us out of the district. But anyway, just very overprotective mother, because I know what happens.
How can you not be?
I know what happens.
Right.
So I think he was chosen for us. These boys were chosen for us.
Wow. Wow. That's an amazing place to get to, and to trust the Lord in that way. Not that we connect all the dots that we can't connect, but to say, Lord, I trust you, that you're working here and you are infinitely good and you love these boys more than we do. It's a profound thing you said a while ago. Okay. Now we can breathe a little easier, go a little bit lighter for a little while, and we're going to add the Chris Sneller addition to this podcast,
let's do this. I like
the
this.
lightning round, where we ask you questions you don't have to think hard about, but just whatever comes to mind, give us your answer as Chris offers these wonderful nuggets.
Okay. Ready for this? Lightning round.
Okay.
What is the best book you've read recently?
I am legally required to tell you guys that I've read all the Game of Thrones books.
Okay.
I think I'm required by law to tell you that.
That's the rule. Okay.
Yeah.
So are you sci-fi kind of? What fantasy? What would that be?
Yeah.
Okay, that's
I've
your deal.
always liked fiction.
Okay.
Like Stephen King,
right.
and like I said, Game of Thrones.
All right. Okay. Intense.
Stephen King, man, that guy scares me.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. His
Yeah.
imagination, his writing.
That's the last book I read was Misery.
Oh,
And,
really?
It's about an author that gets tortured, and I've written a couple books, and I feel tortured sometimes, so I could relate. So
wow, golly,
So is that the last book you read, Misery?
Yeah.
Misery.
Okay.
Okay. Wow. All right.
All right. Next question. Matthew and Nathan's favorite food.
For Matthew, it's pizza.
And Nathan, fish sticks, probably.
Fish sticks and pizza.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Wonderful.
If you have a 3-hour break from Matthew and Nathan, what do you do with your 3 hours?
Usually we go eat sushi, and then
Okay.
we go to a movie.
That's not what I would choose.
I would say, all right.
Now,
Okay.
this is coming off somebody that just got up at 2:30 in the morning because his son woke up and decided to start his day. So I would take a 3-hour nap.
Yeah, we've heard that more than
We
once
have
on the
heard
podcast. The 3-hour nap. Wonderful. We've heard jogs. We've heard, but movies. Yeah.
There we go. So Matthew and Nathan, what is a fascination or a unique skill that they have?
With Matthew, he has always been about letters, numbers, calendars, clocks, and he can tell you somehow, like if you tell him a date, he can tell you what day of the week that fell on, either in the past or in the future.
It's very impressive.
Really?
Yeah.
I've heard this with others. So if I said March 2nd, 1944, he could tell me what day that falls?
Yeah, you'll see him, like he'll stop and you'll see his little brain.
Amazing.
You'll see his little brain working, and it takes a little while sometimes, but
That's incredible.
yeah.
Your Daniel's into clocks, right?
Clocks.
Okay,
Really
so
into
yeah.
rhythmic
Yeah.
motion.
Somehow he
clock?
can figure out leap years too. So
Yeah, and
That's
he
incredible.
even figures leap year into it.
Wow. Anything else to add?
I guess Nathan, what special? He just loves music.
Yeah.
Music.
Nice.
So music
And
has power.
it's it's just something that brings absolute joy to him. Now, unfortunately, it drives us crazy because his idea of music is listening to the same little loop of music over and over.
Okay.
Okay, that is our next
Perfect
question. What
segue.
soundtrack do you have in your car on repeat? Like, what do your boys listen to in your car?
Usually in the car, it's
Bear in the Big Blue House.
yeah,
Okay.
Bear in the Big
For
Blue
her.
House, or Signing Times, the music from the Signing Time videos.
Okay.
And
But they always bring their iPads in the car too, and with Nathan, we've been on months and months and months of Frosty the Snowman now,
Okay.
Wow.
and we're required to sing it
Oh, okay. All right.
on command
Over and
when
over.
he tells us.
Oh.
All right. You've got to be ready. So you have it down.
What is your favorite city in the world?
I don't like cities.
You don't like
I'm a
cities?
country-
What's your
I'm a
favorite
country boy.
spot?
Favorite spot? It used to be at the Sulphur Lake House that we had.
Okay.
There was a place that overlooked the lake
Nice.
in the woods that just overlooked the whole lake, and it was just absolutely beautiful. The birds and deer and all that kind of stuff. That's where
That's where our retirement house was going to be,
Okay.
where we had to
Okay.
move. And now after this tornado, we hope it's even still there.
It skipped it.
Yeah.
Deborah, would you say the same thing as far as the favorite spot?
I don't really have a favorite city, but yeah, I have favorite spots. Like a couple years ago, I went to the K-Love concerts out at Red
Okay.
Rocks in Colorado.
Oh,
I was
I'd love
amazed.
to see that. I've seen pictures.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
So there's just places like that
Places
really
of beauty
stick
like
out.
that.
Yeah, that really stick out in my mind. And then, as I said earlier, I'm a big RV camper. I'm in a couple of different groups where it's all females, and we all go
Really?
camp at different places. and
Sisters
stuff.
on the Fly.
It's called one's called Sisters on the Fly. One's called Women Enjoying the Outdoors. But we all go together, and we do
All right.
we have themes for each one, and we ride bikes and hike and all that kind of stuff. And
So a
that's-
little more serious question to close the lightning round. What are the future dreams that you have for Matthew and Nathan? What are your hopes for them as you think about their future?
I would hope that they continue to be just as happy and joyful as they are right now for
Love
the
that.
rest of their lives, that they're safe, they're protected, they're cared for, and we come up with enough money to make that happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope Brookwood works out because we've really
Wow.
kind of put all our eggs in that basket because it's such
Gotcha.
an amazing place.
Yeah.
So, but I just hope they're happy there when we have to, at some point we will have to get them set up over there. I mean, not anytime soon, hopefully.
Yeah, for those outside this listening in the specific area where we live in West Houston, Brookwood is a residential place, but also it has an active community during the day as well, where there's occupation takes place. There's a garden center and pottery manufacturing. It's a
Restaurant.
pretty incredible place.
They teach them skills.
So I would say there's similar places around the world, but not so many. But there are other
Right.
vocational places or residential centers, and so kind of give people a picture of what that looks like, because I think we're all thinking about,
Future.
30 years from now, what does that
Yeah.
look like?
We are.
And that's the real world. So thank you for sharing that.
Hey, I'm going to jump in with a question, though, Steve and Deb. I see you've taken some notes. Is there anything that we didn't ask you or forgot to ask you that you have in your notes that you would like to share with our audience as we move to our conclusion? Because you have some great insight and great perspective. But anything,
Absolutely.
I think every time I'm frustrated or angry or I feel like I'm getting to the end of my rope, my kids do something silly or something that just brings joy, and it just flips that. And that's where I see God,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
through my kids.
that's great.
We just get to the point where we just don't think we've got anything left in the tank, and they just surprise you sometimes in those darkest times.
And it's been so amazing to just see how much, especially Matthew. Matthew wants to come to church anytime it's open.
He loves being here.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
And he's never really been like that.
I think when churches create a welcome
Yeah.
space for children and adults with special needs, they want to be there.
Right.
They want to be there. So
Right.
an encouragement to all the pastors and churches out there to
Yes.
create those kind of
Right.
environments.
Yeah. And it'll bless your whole church. It blesses everybody. I mean, everybody in the congregation is blessed by that. Well, we've been blessed today to have this conversation.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
taking the time,
Thank you.
introducing yourself to our audience, and so grateful to do life with both of you, for sure. Hey, you've been listening to the Grace and the Chaos podcast with Dr. Chris Sneller and his assistant.
Ryan Rush.
Yeah. It's been fun. Listen, and remember, we have lots of resources at empoweredhomes.org, a growing list of resources for special needs families specifically, but those for pastors, churches, families, and everything's free. So check it out, and we hope to see you next time on Grace and the Chaos.